There is a moment in Earth's history where almost everything alive dies. Not humans, not dinosaurs, almost everything. And on the scale we're about to use, it happened just minutes ago. Because today, we are compressing the entire 4.5 billion year history of Earth into a single 24-hour day. Every ocean, every continent, every creature to ever crawl, swim, hunt, fly, or disappear forever, reduced to one rotation of a clock. At midnight, the Earth is born. For hours, nothing familiar exists. No trees, no animals, no oxygen to breathe. Just boiling oceans and barren land on a planet that looked nothing like the Earth we know today. Then something happens that changes the planet forever. Life appears. Not dinosaurs, not fish, not even plants. Something far stranger. And once it begins, Earth transforms from a lifeless rock into a world filled with extinction events, collapsing ecosystems, frozen oceans, burning continents, and creatures so bizarre they almost look invented. But here's the part that's difficult to comprehend. The dinosaurs, creatures that dominated Earth for over 160 million years, do not appear until after 11 p.m. And humanity? Every empire, every religion, every king, every war, every city, every person who has ever fallen in love, built a civilization, or looked up at the night sky wondering what came before them, appears in the final fraction of a second before midnight. Which raises a terrifying question. If all of human history is less than a blink of an eye, then what exactly happened during the rest of the day? And why were there entire worlds on this planet long before us that have been almost completely erased from existence? Tonight, we are going to watch the Earth build itself, destroy itself, and rebuild itself again and again across billions of years, all in under 1 hour. The clock strikes exactly 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. The beginning of everything. If you could stand in space right now and look down at where Earth should be, you would see no blue oceans, no green continents. What greets you instead is a nightmare. A massive, fiery slaughterhouse suspended in the cold darkness of the young solar system. Scientists call this the Hadean Eon, named after Hades, the god of the underworld in Greek mythology. No name could be more accurate. 4.5 billion years ago, there was no solid ground to stand on. The entire surface of the planet was a boiling ocean of magma, churning at temperatures over 2,000 degrees Celsius. Gravity was doing its violent work, pulling enormous rocks and wandering cosmic debris down to slam into this molten sphere, each impact releasing a terrifying surge of energy. The sky had no blue. It was a gloomy curtain of dust, toxic sulfur gases, dense carbon dioxide, and steam rising from lava pits. The atmosphere at this moment was so heavy and corrosive it could crush and dissolve any living organism in an instant. Earth at hour zero was a planet of pure death, a world that rejected all seeds of life. But the universe was not finished with its violence yet. Only about 10 minutes have passed on our clock. It is now 12:10 a.m., and an event of apocalyptic proportions is about to change the trajectory of this planet forever. From the darkness of the cosmos, another wandering planet is hurtling toward Earth at a destructive speed. Astronomers call it Theia, a protoplanet approximately the size of Mars, over 6,000 kilometers in diameter. Invisible but absolutely powerful gravity locked the orbits of these two giant spheres together in an unavoidable dance of death. There was no one to witness it, no creature to cry out in fear. Only the deathly silence of space before the storm. And then the collision occurred. The energy released was billions of times greater than the most powerful nuclear weapon ever built. The outer layers of both Theia and Earth were instantly vaporized into gas and superheated plasma. Theia was torn into battered fragments. Earth itself nearly shattered completely. The planet's axis was knocked into a permanent tilt, and Theia's heavy iron core sank deep into Earth's interior, eventually making our planet's magnetic field strong enough to deflect deadly radiation storms from the Sun. From the debris flung into orbit, trillions of tons of molten rock and cosmic dust gradually coalesced over thousands of years. From the ashes of the greatest collision in our planet's history, a loyal companion was born. The Moon officially appeared. In those early days, the Moon hung far closer to Earth than it does today. If you looked up at that ancient sky, you would see a vast lava-glowing orb dominating the heavens. And it was this great satellite that became Earth's protector. The Moon's gravity acts as a stabilizing anchor, locking our planet's axial tilt at 23.5 degrees. Without it, Earth would wobble chaotically in space, the poles constantly shifting, the climate lurching between violent extremes, and complex life might never have found its footing. The catastrophe called Theia was, ironically, the greatest gift the universe ever gave us.
The clock ticks forward indifferently. 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m. After the apocalyptic shock of the Moon's birth, Earth began a long, slow process of cooling. The cold vacuum of space pulled heat from the surface. The boiling magma gradually hardened into a thin, pitch-black, cracked basalt crust. Giant volcanoes continued to tear through this crust, launching pillars of ash and smoke kilometers into the sky, pumping greenhouse gases and water vapor into the thickening atmosphere. Water vapor. That is the critical key word. It arrived from two directions simultaneously, carried here by millions of comets and asteroids that bombarded Earth relentlessly for hundreds of millions of years, and released from deep within the planet's own cooling rocks. Across the murky, churning sky, enormous clouds began to build. The atmosphere was saturating toward its breaking point. And then, as the clock prepared to strike 4 a.m., Earth's surface temperature finally dropped below the boiling point of water for the first time. The first drop of rain in the planet's history condensed and fell onto the scorching rock below and evaporated instantly. But following that drop came another, then thousands, then billions upon billions more. The greatest storm in history had begun. This was not a storm that lasted days or weeks. It rained for millions of years without stopping. Water cascaded from the grey sky, drenching barren volcanic plains, carving rivers of mud and minerals, filling ancient meteorite craters. 4 a.m. The million-year rain finally ceased. The sky gradually cleared. The planet's surface had been completely transformed. The hellfire was extinguished, making way for something equally magnificent: the primordial oceans. But do not picture a tropical paradise. This was a vast, deep green or murky brown expanse, saturated with dissolved iron and minerals. The water was intensely acidic. The sky above it burned a vivid orange-red from the still massive concentration of carbon dioxide in the air. There was only the sound of waves slapping against desolate volcanic cliffs. Everything was submerged in a silent, gloomy atmosphere of absolute desolation. Earth had been baptized by fire and water. The stage was set, and in the mysterious silence of that giant primordial ocean, something invisible was stirring. Life was knocking on the door of time.
The sky above remained a thick, toxic orange-red. Acid rain still occasionally hammered the ocean's surface. If you could glide over those pitch-black waves, Earth would appear completely dead. No branch or blade of grass, no sound of birds or beasts. Absolute silence on the surface of the world. But the universe always hides its greatest secrets in the darkest places. Dive down with me, thousands of meters down to the floor of the primordial ocean, where sunlight has never once penetrated. In this cold abyss, under crushing pressure, the Earth's crust was cracked open. Frigid seawater seeped through the fissures, touched the fiery magma chambers below, was heated to hundreds of degrees Celsius and blasted back upward. These were black smokers, hydrothermal vents that continuously discharged into the ocean a thick, mineral-rich soup of hydrogen sulfide, iron, and primordial chemical compounds. Right at the razor-thin boundary between the bone-chilling cold of the seabed and the furious heat of magma, one of the universe's most improbable miracles quietly unfolded. Billions upon billions of random chemical reactions collided relentlessly for tens of millions of years. Atoms of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen, through some miraculous arrangement of probability, bonded together to form the first organic molecules. Those molecules curled inward, wrapping themselves in a thin lipid membrane to separate themselves from the chaos outside. And then an invisible spark was lit. A microscopic structure with no eyes, no brain, no limbs, but possessing a power that no rock or mountain in the universe could ever replicate: the ability to self-replicate. The first single-celled organism on Earth was officially born. Every living thing on this planet today, the blue whale, the ancient oak tree, you sitting here right now, all trace their origin back to that single murky hydrothermal vent at the bottom of a primordial ocean. Our great, last, universal, common ancestor.
The clock ticks coldly onward. 5 a.m., 7 a.m., 10 a.m. If you were hoping for a sea monster, you are going to be disappointed. For the next 6 grueling hours on our clock, equivalent to roughly 1 billion actual years, life barely moved. The planet's only protagonists were single-celled bacteria, invisible to the naked eye. They drifted aimlessly, clung to dark rock crevices, fed on chemical compounds, and were constantly wiped out by meteorite impacts and violent temperature swings. They were too small, too fragile. Earth seemed fully capable of ending this biological experiment at any moment with a single, indifferent sigh. But life is more resilient than it appears, and evolution never stops searching for the next opening. The clock strikes 1 p.m. The sun blazes down onto the ocean's surface, and at this moment, a branch of bacteria made the boldest move in biological history. Instead of hiding in the deep sea and scavenging chemicals, they swam to the surface. Scientists call them cyanobacteria, blue-green algae, and they invented something the world had never seen before: photosynthesis. Using chlorophyll to absorb sunlight directly, they broke down water and carbon dioxide to manufacture sugar. This ability to create energy from light alone turned cyanobacteria into absolute rulers. They exploded in population, carpeting the primordial oceans with massive microbial mats. But there was one deadly side effect buried in this great invention. Like every industrial machine, photosynthesis produced waste, and the waste that cyanobacteria pumped directly into the ancient oceans was, ironically, something you breathe every single day: oxygen. Before 1 p.m. on our clock, oxygen was not just useless, it was poison. A brutally reactive gas that tore through cell membranes, destroyed DNA, and incinerated anaerobic bacteria on contact. As cyanobacteria populations exploded, they pumped billions of tons of this toxic gas into the ocean. A global massacre began. Ancient anaerobic life was annihilated wherever the oxygen reached. Dissolved iron in the seawater reacted violently, rusting, and billions of tons of deep red iron oxide precipitated to the seabed, staining the entire ocean a dark, rusty brown. It took hundreds of millions of years for all that dissolved iron to be consumed before the excess oxygen finally began escaping into the atmosphere. The sky gradually shifted from toxic orange to pale blue, but the price for that blue sky was catastrophic. Geologists call this the Great Oxygenation Event. For the first time in Earth's history, it was not a meteorite or a volcano that triggered a mass extinction. It was life itself, slaughtering its own kind on a planetary scale. And the consequences did not stop there.
When oxygen flooded the atmosphere, it immediately reacted with and destroyed methane, the powerful greenhouse gas that had been keeping Earth warm. It was like smashing every window of a greenhouse in the middle of winter. With the methane blanket torn away, Earth's temperature plummeted without mercy. The clock strikes 2 p.m. Sunlight still reaches the surface, but it carries no warmth. Global temperatures collapsed to -50 degrees Celsius. Vast white ice sheets began forming at the poles and crawled unstoppably toward the equator. The white ice reflected sunlight back into space, cooling the planet further, triggering a runaway loop of doom. Within a geological instant, all the oceans were frozen solid under ice kilometers thick. Even the equatorial tropics were buried in perpetual blizzards. From space, Earth was no longer a fireball or a blue marble. It had transformed into Snowball Earth, a brilliant white, silent and deadly ice prison drifting through the solar system. The young life that had just emerged was frozen, trapped in absolute darkness beneath thousands of meters of ice. All hope seemed extinguished. Yet deep beneath the frozen oceans, clustered around the rare surviving volcanic vents, tiny seeds of life refused to surrender. They huddled together in the dark, drawing warmth from the planet's own heartbeat, patiently waiting. The game of survival had barely passed the halfway point. The most horrific events were still ahead. The great snowball drifted aimlessly through space. But even then, even when completely frozen, the fiery pulse within Earth's core never stopped. Immense pressure built beneath the rigid crust until it finally found a way to release. A series of supervolcanoes awakened simultaneously, roaring as they tore through kilometers of ice. They did not just pour lava onto the frozen surface. More critically, they injected billions of tons of carbon dioxide back into the atmosphere. This time, there were no open oceans to absorb it, no rains to wash it away. Carbon dioxide accumulated into a thick greenhouse blanket, trapping solar heat. Global temperatures slowly, then rapidly, climbed. The eternal ice cracked and began to melt. Liquid water flooded the surface once more. The snowball was rescued. Life had survived the worst prison Earth had ever built. 10:30 p.m. Welcome to the Carboniferous period, the era of giant nightmares. Earth at this moment looked exactly like the set of a science fiction horror film. Massive, humid, primeval swamp forests blanketed the supercontinents, ancient ferns and scale trees soaring 30 meters into the air, their canopy sealing out all sunlight below. But the strangest detail was invisible. Nature had not yet invented bacteria capable of decomposing wood. When the giant trees fell, they did not rot. They piled on top of each other, buried under mud, locking their carbon away underground permanently. And the runaway photosynthesis they produced pushed atmospheric oxygen levels to a staggering 35%. For insects, creatures that breathe through pores along their bodies, this was pure doping. Size limits shattered. Look up. That deafening wingbeat above you belongs to Meganeura, a predatory dragonfly the size of a hawk, with a wingspan approaching a meter. It tears through the air at terrifying speeds, snatching prey with spine-covered legs. And on the ground, the true nightmares crawl. A jet-black, armoured monster over 2.5 meters long slithers out of the swamp mist. Arthropleura, the largest millipede species that has ever existed on Earth. For humans, with our comparatively tiny bodies, a journey back to the Carboniferous would not be an exploration. It would be a death sentence. We would be appetizers. But the Carboniferous could not last. Nature had already loaded its finger over the delete key.
The clock strikes 10:40 p.m. We are about to witness the most catastrophic event in 4.5 billion years of Earth's existence. Scientists call it the Great Dying, the Permian mass extinction. The murderer was hiding directly beneath the ground. In the Siberian region of present-day Russia, a catastrophic system of crustal rifts tore open. A sea of mantle magma spanning millions of square kilometers began surging toward the surface. It erupted and kept erupting for a full 1,000,000 years. The volume of molten rock was enough to bury the entire United States under a layer of stone more than 1 kilometer thick. But lava alone only killed creatures nearby. As the magma rose, it cooked the massive coal deposits buried underground. Trillions of tons of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide were blasted into the atmosphere. An extreme greenhouse effect ignited. Global temperatures spiked. Ocean waters heated to nearly 40 degrees Celsius at the equator. The seas became stagnant, oxygen-depleted pools. Anaerobic bacteria exploded in population, tinting the oceans a sickly pinkish purple and bubbling toxic hydrogen sulfide gas to the surface, poisoning coastal creatures and rising to corrode the ozone layer above. With the ozone layer gone, ultraviolet radiation hammered the ground without mercy. The atmosphere became a thick soup of ash and sulfuric acid rain, a perfect interlocking domino chain of doom. 96% of all marine species vanished without a trace. 70% of terrestrial vertebrates collapsed. The oceans were piled high with rotting carcasses. Animals suffocated, burned, starved, and were poisoned simultaneously. Earth had been thrown back to the starting line. Yet somewhere beneath the still smouldering layers of ash, a few small, mammal-like reptiles survived. They had no way of knowing that this same extinction had just demolished every competitor standing in their descendants' way, clearing the ecological stage for the rise of the greatest empire this planet would ever see. The age of the dinosaurs was coming. The clock hand moves to 10:56 p.m., nearly 11 at night. As greenhouse gases finally settled and sweet rains washed the toxins from the shattered ground, massive ecological gaps opened across every continent. Tiny, resilient creatures that had sheltered in deep burrows emerged, blinking into the light. Among them were the archosaurs, a group of reptiles that, seizing the absence of their giant predecessors, began evolving at breakneck speed. They grew larger, restructured their hips, and rose onto 2 legs. The stage was cleared.
The stands were empty, and the true kings of Earth stepped into the light. Welcome to the Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs. For the next hour and a half on our clock, equivalent to 160 million actual years, Earth belonged completely, unconditionally, and absolutely to them. No generation of creatures before or since, including humans, has ever dominated this planet with such mythical authority, such staggering diversity, and such sheer physical scale. Imagine standing on a flooded Jurassic plain. The ground beneath your feet begins to vibrate rhythmically, a deep, rolling drumbeat rising from the distance. You look up. Blocking out a corner of the sky is a herd of sauropods, the largest plant-processing machines to ever walk the Earth. Argentinosaurus, 30 meters long, nearly 100 tons. Its neck stretching 15 meters into the air, ripping through the canopy of ancient conifers. Its heart must have been the size of a car, pumping thousands of liters of blood up that impossible neck. When a herd of these creatures moved, it was like watching mountains walk. But the empire of the lizards was not confined to the ground. Look up at the sky. Giant shadows glide overhead, blocking out the sun. These are not birds. These are pterosaurs, the winged thunder lizards. Quetzalcoatlus, with a wingspan of 11 meters, as wide as a modern F-16 fighter jet, riding thermal currents across vast oceans, scooping fish from the surface with spectacular, elongated beaks. And beneath the waves, the horror was absolute. Plesiosaurs threading their python-like necks through coral reefs. And the most ferocious of all, the mosasaur, a killing machine 15 meters long, with jaws that could expand wide enough to swallow a great white shark whole, turning the Cretaceous seas into a perpetual bloodbath, where the only rule was the largest teeth win. But the supreme symbol of power, the apex predator, the emperor of all emperors, only appeared in the final minutes of the Cretaceous. About 68 million years ago, an ear-splitting roar tore through the dense coniferous forest. The ground trembled under approaching footsteps. Tyrannosaurus rex had emerged from the brush. No words adequately capture the deadly perfection of this animal. 12 meters long, 4.5 meters tall, 8 tons of pure violence. T-Rex did not hunt with elegance or stealth. It hunted with overwhelming force. Its bite generated tens of thousands of newtons of pressure, the strongest bite force ever recorded among land animals. Its 60 thick, serrated teeth, each the size of a banana, were not designed to slice flesh. They were engineered to crush bone and extract marrow. When T-Rex locked onto its prey, it didn't just end a life. It shattered the skeleton into fragments. For millions of years, Tyrannosaurus rex stood at the absolute pinnacle of the food chain, looking down on everything with the absolute confidence of a creature that had never known a natural enemy. But every pride eventually must answer to the ruthlessness of the universe.
The clock strikes 11:39 p.m. Only 21 minutes remain until midnight. A perfectly ordinary late afternoon at the end of the Cretaceous period, 66 million years ago.
herds of triceratops move slowly across the North American plains, chewing ferns. T-Rex sniffs the air in the distance. The sky is a vast, deep blue. But against that peaceful blue backdrop, a tiny point of light appears. At first, it looks like a daytime star. But this star does not stay still. It grows larger and larger, transforming from a pinprick of light into a rolling fireball, trailing a colossal tail of smoke that begins to blot out the sun. A 10-kilometer asteroid, a rock larger than Mount Everest, hurtling toward Earth at 70,000 kilometers per hour, 60 times the speed of sound. In those final moments, dinosaurs across the continent looked up at the sky. Their eyes reflected the blinding light of the apocalypse. They had no concept of death from above. They had no reason to flee. They simply stood and watched as the stone god of death descended. The asteroid pierced the atmosphere in under 2 seconds. The air in front compressed so violently it ignited into superheated plasma. It plunged into the shallow waters of the Gulf of Mexico and instantly gouged a crater 150 kilometers wide and 20 kilometers deep, shoving a chunk of the Earth's crust directly into the mantle below. The energy released, 100 million megatons, billions of times more powerful than every nuclear weapon ever built, detonated simultaneously. In the first millisecond, a flash brighter than 1,000 suns erupted, incinerating every living thing within 1,500 kilometers before their nervous systems could register pain. T-Rex and Triceratops simply ceased to exist. In the next second, a shockwave moving at thousands of kilometers per hour swept across North America, uprooting forests, hurling animals through the air like broken toys. Earthquakes measuring 11 on the Richter scale tore the ground apart and triggered every volcanic system on the planet simultaneously. The ocean tossed a mega tsunami hundreds of meters high that reshaped entire coastlines in minutes. But the coldest killer came from the sky itself. The impact vaporized billions of tons of rock from the Earth's crust, flinging it into space. As this material cooled in the vacuum, it formed countless tiny glowing glass spherules, which gravity then pulled back down in a global firestorm. Trillions of superheated glass stones fell through the atmosphere, friction turning the entire sky into a glowing red oven. Forests across every continent spontaneously combusted simultaneously. The entire surface of the planet was swallowed in a single ocean of fire. The dinosaurs that had survived the initial blast now faced a slower and more horrible death. Where could they run when the sky itself was on fire? Days later, as the fires died, billions of tons of ash and soot spread completely around the globe, sealing out the sun. Earth was plunged into total darkness. Nuclear winter began. Global temperatures collapsed. Without sunlight, photosynthesis stopped. Plants withered. The food chain was severed at its roots. Giant herbivores starved and collapsed. And as the prey disappeared, the great carnivores, the tyrant kings, entered their most desperate days. They roared in the cold darkness, fighting each other over the last rotting carcasses, growing weaker and weaker until they too fell into the filthy snow. In a single cosmic blink, the greatest empire ever built collapsed into ruin. 160 million years of reign, extinguished by one stray rock. 99% of all dinosaur species went extinct. But as the giants fell, something small was already raising its head. After the rock from space rewrote the planet, Earth was no longer green or burning. It was grey, silent, cold, a grave. But look closely beneath the ash. In tiny, damp burrows deep under rotting roots, small, warm lives were trembling and holding on. Creatures resembling today's shrews, warm-blooded, furred, our most distant ancestors. Why did they survive when T-Rex did not? The answer is humility. These creatures did not require hundreds of kilograms of meat per day. They ate insects, worms, seeds fallen beneath the ash, and even scavenged scraps from the decomposing bodies of the great dinosaurs themselves. They possessed something reptiles fundamentally lacked: warm blood and insulating fur. When the Earth went cold, they generated their own heat from within. And when food became scarce, their mothers did not abandon their offspring. They secreted a rich, white liquid from their own bodies to nourish the next generation: breast milk. That primal act of maternal devotion saved our entire lineage from extinction. And then, over thousands of years, the dust in the sky finally settled. The first weak rays of sunlight pierced the grey clouds and fell on the desolate ground. A new dawn had truly arrived.
11:45 p.m. With the dinosaurs gone, the land, sky, and oceans were suddenly empty. Massive ecological gaps stood open, waiting for new kings. And mammals answered. From their timid origins as tiny burrowing creatures, they exploded outward in the most spectacular evolutionary radiation in history. Jungles regrew, greener, richer, now decorated with flowers and sweet fruit for the first time. Mammals broke every size limit they had ever known. Some returned to the ocean, transforming limbs into fins, layering thick blubber against the deep-sea cold, and becoming the giant whales that rule the blue world today. On land, giant hornless rhinoceroses stretched spectacular necks 5 meters into the air. Woolly mammoths trudged across frozen tundra. Saber-toothed smilodon, curved fangs 20 centimeters long, lurked in tall grass, waiting for a single, perfect moment. Earth was overflowing with life once more. But turn your attention toward Africa. High in the canopy of dense primary rainforests, a small branch of mammals was quietly sharpening an invaluable skill, grasping with hands bearing opposable thumbs, and reading the three-dimensional world through forward-facing, depth-perceiving eyes. The first primates. Our family was beginning.
The clock hand sweeps toward 11:58 p.m. Less than 2 minutes remain. And once again, nature changed the rules without warning. Tectonic plates collided, pushing vast mountain ranges skyward and blocking the moisture currents that had fed Africa's great forests. The climate turned colder and drier. The dense canopies that had sheltered primates for millions of years began to shrink, pulling back and giving way to vast, open savanna grasslands. Our ancestors, creatures built for the safety of high branches and the sweetness of tree fruit, were suddenly pushed into open ground. Standing in the middle of a sun-scorched wilderness, grass above their heads, surrounded by predators many times faster, stronger, and larger. No claws to tear flesh, no fangs to bite back, no armor. A running speed that was, frankly, embarrassing. By every law of evolutionary logic, this creature should have gone extinct immediately. It was the most perfectly helpless prey on the planet. But instead of collapsing, it did something no creature had ever done before. It stood up. Rising onto two hind legs freed the hands completely from the work of movement. And those liberated hands, combined with a brain being stretched and expanded daily by the relentless pressure of survival problems that demanded creative solutions, produced something that would reshape the entire history of this planet. Tools. A broken branch became a spear. A sharply struck pebble became a cutting edge. And then, at 11:59 p.m. on our clock, on a cold, stormy night deep in ancient history, a branch of Homo erectus brought a burning ember from a lightning-struck tree back into their cave and held it there. The fire stayed lit. Exactly 1 minute left on the clock. The flickering fire in the cave did more than push back the darkness and frighten predators away. It cooked food. Cooked meat was far easier to digest, unlocking a massive surplus of calories that the body had never had access to before. That energy was channeled into a single organ above all others: the brain. Intelligence accelerated. For the first time, the meaningless sounds of animals began to transform into language. For the first time, instead of simply fearing the night, these upright creatures sat around the fire, sharing food, recounting stories, imagining worlds beyond what their eyes could see. The concepts of family, tribe, culture, and meaning officially ignited. The clock strikes 11:59 and 58 seconds. 2 seconds left until midnight. This is our moment. Homo sapiens officially steps onto the stage. Enduring brutal ice ages that froze the oceans, human tribes crossed frozen land bridges connecting continents and spread to every corner of the globe. With intelligence, unparalleled social cooperation, and deadly weapons, the creature that was once the weakest prey on the African grasslands climbed to the absolute top of the food chain. Every giant competitor, from mammoths to saber-toothed tigers, and even close human relatives like the Neanderthals, was pushed into extinction, one by one. Now, hold your breath. The clock shows 1/10 of a final second. 1/10 of a second. The blink of an eye. In that single, compressed, blazing instant, everything you know about human history erupts simultaneously. Humans threw down their stone spears and pushed seeds into the ground. Agriculture was born. Huts became villages. Villages became cities. Language was carved into clay tablets, giving birth to writing. Great civilizations rose along the banks of mighty rivers. Egypt, with her towering pyramids defying time. Babylon, with her hanging gardens. Rome, with her legions marching across continents. China, raising her Great Wall with blood and stone. Everything accelerated, blurring like a film reel spun millions of times past its intended speed. Clashing swords gave way to the roar of gunpowder. Sails gave way to steam engines. Candlelight gave way to electric brilliance flooding the night. The world drowned twice in the blood of the two most brutal wars in history. And then, in the most fragile sliver of that final instant, a roar of jet engines shattered the atmosphere. Humanity escaped Earth's gravity. A human boot pressed into the dust of the moon. Computers were born. The internet threaded billions of minds together through cables lying silent on the ocean floor. Artificial intelligence awoke, and unmanned spacecraft are right now, in this very moment, crossing the outer edges of the solar system, carrying our greetings out into the infinite dark. All of it, every tear, every love, every atrocity, every masterpiece, every discovery that ever changed the world, compressed into less than the final 0.2 of a second of the day. The ticking stops. 0 hours, 0 minutes, and 0 seconds. 24 hours have passed. The day is over. We have traveled through 4.5 billion years, across seas of hellfire, across the frozen silence of Snowball Earth, through the most catastrophic extinctions and the most breathtaking explosions of life this universe has ever produced, and arrived here, at this precise moment, as you sit breathing the air of the 21st century. Looking back at that complete panoramic sweep of time, perhaps something rises quietly inside you, a feeling of being overwhelmed, of being profoundly, utterly small. We beat our chests and call ourselves the masters of all species, the center of the universe. But on the unforgiving scale of geological time, humanity has existed for a handful of heartbeats. Our presence is as fragile as a single grain of dust catching the light in a sunbeam. This Earth was thriving long before the first human drew breath. It has survived 5 catastrophic mass extinctions. It has demolished and rebuilt its entire ecosystem from the ground up repeatedly. And it will continue rotating silently through the void long after we are gone, whether we earn that continuation or not. But our smallness does not make us meaningless. No creature in the past 24 hours, not the largest tyrannosaur, not the most catastrophic supervolcano, has possessed the power to reshape the face of this planet with the speed that we have. In that razor-thin final fraction of a second, we have rerouted rivers, leveled mountain ranges, incinerated the carbon reserves of the Carboniferous period, and altered the chemical composition of the atmosphere itself. We have become a true force of nature, a self-directed asteroid, hurtling toward a target of our own making. The question now is not where we came from. That story has been told. The question is where we choose to go. Can we, with all our intelligence and all our accumulated wisdom, overcome the crises we have built with our own hands? Will we be wise enough to protect the fragile, irreplaceable blue home that 4.5 billion years of fire, ice, catastrophe, and miracle produced for us? Or will we simply leave behind a thin layer of fossil plastic and radioactive waste, waiting to be excavated by whatever intelligence rises after us in a few billion years? The clock of the new day has already begun its first seconds. The future of this planet is not written in the rock. It is being written right now, in every choice we make today. Thank you for traveling with me to the end of this chronicle. If a single moment in this journey gave you pause, made you feel wonder or vertigo, or something harder to name, leave it in the comments. I would genuinely love to read what stayed with you. If these kinds of deep, sweeping journeys through the scale of existence are what you're here for, hit like and subscribe so we can keep going together. There is so much more universe left to explore.